Okay, again, Matthew chapter 22, starting in verse 15. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to entangle him in his words, and they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. Tell us then, what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin for the tax. And they brought him a denarius. And Jesus said to them, Whose likeness and inscription is this? They said, Caesar's. Then he said to them, Therefore, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. When they heard it, they marveled, and they left him and went away. And I think I'm going to stop here. It really is a shame because the next set of verses to the end of the chapter really kind of all tie together, but I think it'll be too much to try to get it all in one thought. So what that means is that you need to come back the next 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, you just have to.
Did you work for NBC or something?
That's right. But there's more.
There's more.
After this commercial break.
After this commercial break from Bedford or something like that. So, this is all started. This is a session that of the elders and the chief priests who said, under what authority do you say these things and do these things? And so this has been Matthew's recording of these responses and what's going on. So we get a next set of people who are which it kind of threw me at first. It's like, well, yeah, duh, there should be. They're disciples. Now, in 16 it says, and they sent their disciples. Typically when I hear the word disciples, I think of Jesus' disciples, but that's not these disciples. These are the Pharisees' disciples. These are the Pharisees in training, if I can kind of call it that. Yeah. These are the newbies. These are the rookies. The guys. The minions. Yeah, let them go ahead and do it. The probies.
And those can be the worst.
Right? Yeah. Let's get them after it, and we'll do it. So that's these people here, and then along with the Herodians. Okay, so. Who are the Herodians? Because it sounds pretty cool to have that name, but
It's going to be Herod.
it's related to Herod. Their family members are related to Herod, so that's what they are.
Seems like an odd.
And it is a very odd pairing.
Yeah, because they're the political, I would say.
So the Pharisees, how do they feel about the Roman occupation?
They don't.
Right, and it's beyond just a how dare you invade my land. But that you are on God's turf. You are insulting God here. That's how the Pharisees look at Rome, as just, the devil themselves, if you will. Well, the Herodians aren't that way, okay? Because it kept them in power.
They're the political side.
Right, exactly. So really, it's two kind of opposite folks coming together in one here.
With one common enemy,
Yeah.
so to speak.
But what I thought was interesting is that for the Herodians, it wasn't Herod or the chief. These were the people behind the scenes.
Right.
Similarly, on the Pharisee side, it wasn't the Pharisees and the elders and scribes. It was their back people.
Right.
It's almost like, the White House and Putin, or whatever they call that over there, talking, but not through official channels.
Right.
It's
The back channel.
And so things can be said without being recorded,
Right.
and, yada, yada.
Right.
I think that's what a lot of this is kind of
I think it could be.
plausible deniability.
Right.
A lot of things go with that.
I also think that they are afraid of Jesus' answer and make the Pharisees look bad, right?
Right.
So we'll get the juniors to do it, and
Yeah,
if they
put a
get
little distance between them
Right.
and
Exactly.
what's
Right,
gonna
right.
play out.
boy, what I find amazing on these first few verses is it's the same today as it was back then.
Yeah.
It's not like mankind learned anything.
Yeah, the interesting thing too is that the Pharisees put all this together, right? In other words, they said, we know he's going to have an answer to us, but if we put somebody from the other side.
Right.
He's got it.
Right. He's gonna-
One side or the other. He's got to go one
Yeah,
side or the other.
right, yeah.
Right?
He's gonna
That's
make
what he
somebody
did.
mad, yeah.
He's got to make somebody mad. So that's why he thought, hey, we got him trapped now.
Right.
We'll get the Herodians to come
That's
with
true.
us,
Right.
the political side. We're the religious side. Let's see what he does
Right,
now,
right.
right? So,
And what it emphasizes to me is the amount of effort these folks put in to
Yeah.
try to trip him.
Yeah.
It, you know,
It says they took counsel.
yes,
They put their minds together, look.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he's answered them pretty good in the past. I said, we gotta really think this
that's
before we
right.
go.
So let's plot
really
this one
getting
out.
this.
Let's get a decision tree and draw on a dry marker here.
Probably
Let's,
occupying all their time and attention.
right, exactly. On how well can this be received? They probably even took polls. I don't know. Sorry. And so the question is here, but it's the preface to the question.
Right.
Is what I really like. We know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances.
Yeah.
I just hear this,
Yeah.
this suck up. That's all in this.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting because they're absolutely lying to him while asking the question.
Yeah.
What they're
That's
trying
why
to
he
do
said-
is, I'm sorry, they're trying to get on his good side, so
Right.
maybe he'll lower his
Right.
guard.
Well,
Yeah.
and then you look at his response, he didn't say why he said, why are you testing me? That's
Right.
a little different than saying, why are you
Yeah.
questioning?
Yeah.
Why are you testing me? In other words, why are you testing my authority here?
Yeah.
Remember that.
Yeah.
Right, right. So is it true that Jesus doesn't really care about anyone's opinion?
yes.
No. Sorry.
I don't think he cares about, I mean, I think he was interested in the truth and only the truth. And I mean, with all of his comments of you've heard it said, so I think he's not interested. He is, well, that's, I think he is interested in their opinion, but he's not swayed.
There you go, that's the other half.
Right, he's not swayed by their opinion. He may be interested in why they think that way or whatever, but the bottom line is that he's only interested in truth.
Yeah,
And he's
no,
not gonna be
anyway.
swayed by,
Yeah, because, and I think you hit the nail on the head, and he regards no statue of a person, in other words, because it says, again, New King James says, you don't care about anyone. For you do not regard the person of them. It's
Right.
kind of like in the same thing.
Right.
Everybody's in the same boat with him, and that's.
well, I mean, that's why they did what they did to him here, is they said he's gonna have to choose between the political or the
Yep.
religious. He's gotta choose one or the other, so that's why they tried to set him up the way they did.
Okay. And so in the phrase, you are not swayed by appearances, that's the way mine's worded.
Yeah.
Just to put it in context, it's, remember your clothing indicated your status
That's right.
in there. That was your outward status.
Here's what car you drive.
Right,
There
right.
you right. What
Yeah.
you wore.
In our modern day, it
If
could
you
be.
drive a Tesla, you
That's
weigh
right,
up.
I'm way.
You're way up there.
I'm way
You had the Bible study
somewhere.
before
Right, exactly. Coat and tie would indicate one thing,
Yes.
right? Shorts and t-shirts would indicate
A robe,
a road, right?
Judge
Exactly.
robe,
Right,
that kind
and
of-
all of that kind of stuff. So,
and then the British side, the wig, all
yeah,
that sort of stuff.
still wearing the wig. I just don't understand
I
that.
don't get that.
The little things hanging from the bottom of your car.
Yeah, the tassels, the
Tassels.
number of
Yeah, that's
tassels.
right,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
With it. So then comes to the question, tell us then, what do you think? And it gets to the question, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Of course, the answer is no. No, I'm just kidding. But my bias is in full gear. I'll
You
tell
can
you
see
that.
it listed
I
on
can-
the shirt.
Yeah, actually, it was by accident this morning.
Oh, yeah.
Taxes and-
Oh, look at that. He did good.
Taxation is that. But that was really by accident. It was just happened to be the next thing on top. But, so the question is it lawful to pay? So, first of all, lawful?
Oh.
This is, it seems kind of an odd question to me about asking the law. What kind of, isn't it lawful, isn't it unlawful not to pay taxes, right? I mean,
The laws are made of men, or Man-made.
Yeah. So what's the problem here? I mean.
Well, the problem here is the reason why they were doing it was if he said, no, it's unlawful, then he was gonna be in trouble with the king of the Romans,
Right.
right? If the tax is unlawful. So it's, I don't think the issue is whether a tax is lawful or unlawful. I think it's the issue is you asked me this question. And the reason you asked me this question is where the issue lies.
So that's what Jesus responded back to.
Yeah.
But the question of the lawful, and you have to go back to the original Greek or whatever. Wasn't the Mosaic laws considered laws? Laws of God, or however they worded it?
They were separate.
As opposed to the laws of Caesar?
Right.
Yep.
They may have purposefully used the word law because
It could go either way,
they could go either way, and depending on how he answered, they could come down from the other angle.
which would show who your allegiance is
Well, that's
to.
all they were trying to do, right?
Exactly what
Yeah.
it was.
Is it to Rome? Is it to
Right.
the
Right,
secular, right?
And I would say every time when we, especially in the Gospels, anytime the law is mentioned, it is Mosaic law. I
Yeah.
think that's what they were
Yeah.
trying to tie it into.
Right.
Okay, now you tell us, just what you're saying. I mean, Israel was a separate entity
Right.
being controlled by.
So do you think this phrasing here, the lawful, was purposefully a duplicitous kind of question?
Yep.
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
I
what,
really do.
what law are you gonna be in allegiance to?
Right.
Yeah, Rome or,
Right.
Who are you gonna serve?
Yeah,
I-
yeah.
what exactly was the poll tax? I know you had to look it up. The poll tax, what was?
Actually, I didn't look up the poll tax.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Cause I know there were several different taxes
Oh, yeah.
that they had to pay. I was wondering why they mentioned it as the poll tax.
Wait,
Yours says poll tax,
yours
mine
says
doesn't
poll
say that.
tax?
Yeah,
Yeah.
mine doesn't just say pay
So it
taxes.
says,
Pay
yours
taxes
says
to
it is
Caesar.
lawful to pay poll tax?
To give a poll tax to Caesar or not.
POLO?
P-O-L-L.
Mine just says pay tax to Caesar or not. But
You
Jesus,
had civil law too, we had the
You're-
Ten Commandments, and then they had civil law
Yeah.
for government.
Right,
and stuff
so,
like that.
most of the, and by the way, is it a coincidence that this is well recorded in the book of Matthew? And what was
he's
Matthew's?
a tax collector. Yeah, that's kinda like that.
True.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
He's an authority on that.
Which is it coincidence? I don't think so. I
Oh,
think this is
that's- I
personal. So part of that poll tax.
Okay, here's it said, according to this commentary, the term or whatever the Greek word is, was borrowed from Latin and referred to a poll tax, a tax paid by each adult male to the Roman government.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Poll, I guess if
So-
you're on the polls of the roll,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just,
as opposed to,
you're issued a tax, then you gotta pay that, it's just
Yeah.
a tax because you are who you are.
you're the head of the family or whatever the.
Or
phraseology was.
you're part of the occupied nation.
And as Albert says, nothing changed in 2,000 years.
No. And it hasn't. Okay, so in 18, Jesus is aware of their malice, it says, and he asks, why put me to the test? And he calls them a smart guys, hypocrite. Why? Why is that a hypocrite in this situation? What does Jesus really see in their hypocrisy?
They don't really wanna know the answer.
They pay the tax.
Hmm?
They pay the tax.
I'm assuming they literally wouldn't.
They would be in jail,
Yeah.
Right.
so they're still paying the tax.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus the motive of asking really is hypocritical.
Is the hypocritical part,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
It really is.
Exactly.
And so why is it so brilliant? Everybody has said that in verse 19, this is the most brilliant answer is 19 and 20. Show me the coin for the tax. And shows, Caesar and says, well, render unto Caesar what's Caesar's. And what is God's got?
This is a Solomon answer. I love
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Well, you can tell
Yeah.
it really reminds me,
Yeah.
of Christ it's
Yeah.
just, even though,
Yeah, one little sentence.
So why? Why is this so brilliant? What makes it a Solomon answer?
Because he didn't
The
jump
money-
on one side or the other, it wasn't a yes, no answer.
Or the
The
money.
Solomon answer being divide the baby in half, right?
Or in this case, the very money they're talking about handing back belonged to the civil government.
Right.
Right.
Well, by the way, who provided the coin?
Civil government.
Caesar.
No, in this question, show me, he says, show me a
One of
coin.
them.
Yeah, Jesus didn't pull out a
Jesus didn't.
coin out of his own
Yeah.
pocket
Oh,
to
yeah.
show. Who had possession of the foreign coin?
Probably the Pharisees.
Pharisees,
Yeah.
I'm assuming, we don't, maybe a Herodian.
It could have been a Herodian, but
Now,
it
remember
was
this
one of those
also.
guys, right?
Remember this, you have two separate money systems.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Remember that. Now, that's why he says the inscription. This is for Rome. That's why when they came in every year, they had to convert their money to Jewish money.
Right.
So again, it's
That's the
all,
money changers, right?
Christ was all, you wanna be a smart aleck? Okay, let's do it. We're gonna separate everything.
I just find it funny that it says, any of you got a Roman coin?
Yeah.
Any of you?
Show me the tax, he says, mine says, show me the tax money.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Show
You
me
had to pay in
the,
Roman
the
coins.
tax money, and guess, you're right, who had the tax money? They did.
Yeah, the tax, it does say that, show
Yeah.
me the coin for the tax.
Yeah, that's what mine says, show me the coin used for the for the poll tax.
The very coin we're talking about.
So they had to
The very
be-
tax money we're talking about.
How
And
did
it's
that
Roman coin, remember that.
Right.
The denarius is a Roman coin, and you gotta separate, that's why I said, people, when you go back then, you gotta remember, Jews were Jews, and they had two
Yeah.
separate systems.
Yeah, so don't just show me some money, but show me this Roman money.
That's
You know,
right.
when they had to, when Jesus overturned the tables.
Money changes.
Money changers to go from the Roman coin to the.
That's right.
To the Israeli or whatever coin, so they could pay the.
And people like Matthew would take their cut when you transfer it over. That's what all this is kind of wrapped in, because you're right, when Matthew, you gotta know the history. When this question came down, he was gonna make even poor people mad.
Yeah.
Because they were getting,
Yeah. And instead of selling the sacrificial things for the proper price, they were
yeah.
making a big profit off of
Yeah,
it.
right,
So,
right.
Well, I mean, that's how the tax collectors, that's why they were so hated, is
That's right.
because the tax collectors, that's how they made their money, is they would add a little extra to, you know, to the tax, and that was their
Handling
salary.
fee.
Yes,
Handling fee.
yep,
And it was up to him to determine how much the fee was. Rome kind of left him alone, but
yeah,
as long as
as long as they
the
got their money.
money. And if they went too high, they got killed. So that's how they kind
You know,
of.
paper boys in the old days,
Yeah, I was.
remember you had to collect the money and
Yeah.
pay X amount to the company.
Yep.
You got to keep the extra, so
Right.
anybody that stiffed you came out of your pocket,
That's
not the
right.
company.
That's
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's right.
That's
You know,
right.
these 10-year-old kids
I
trying to
remember
beg
that.
the neighbors for their profit.
I was one of them. I said, hey, and you had customers who were trying to say, look, I gotta pay for it, and then they go, oh, I didn't know that. Seriously?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I didn't know that, and they give me the
But they're
money.
home and they wouldn't answer the door, they knew, you know.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right, we got digress.
Sorry, there's still,
That's all right.
these raw scabs still out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's painful.
You gotta look for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what is Jesus really trying to say about rendering?
I think it's the same message that's in Romans 13, where,
13:1?
we're often told.
Let's go there.
Romans chapter 13 is, the chapter that
It's the libertarian scripture, as we call
the
it.
scripture, we're told to be proper citizens up and unto, as long as it doesn't violate God's moral or
Right.
will.
Right,
So
so
up to that point, we're to be proper citizens.
Romans
Follow the rules.
13, verse 1.
Even if you don't like it.
That's right.
Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on wrongdoers. Therefore, one must be in subjection, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for the authorities are ministers of God, attending to this very thing. Pay to all what is owed them, taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed. The interesting thing about this is that this is a presumption that, or a, what do I want to call it, what I'm looking for. That was not the ideal plan. Romans 13 was not God's original great plan for men to live in society, was to build out a government. Remember that in the Old Testament, the kings were basically instituted by men and allowed by God. Not because God said, hey, let's make this a good plan, or let's put some kings together.
That's what they wanted.
That's what they wanted. And so this is all under the underlining that men cannot work socially with each other without some kind of organization.
Right.
And we call that organization a government, is what that is. And in theory, that we all work together in that. We cooperate.
common good.
For the common
Supposedly.
good, right, right.
But that's also the verse that a lot of kings, if you will, in the old days use. See, I'm ordained by God.
Bam,
Right here.
right, exactly.
It's
And
not the
that's,
head of the government,
Right.
and it just says, you know,
Right.
so I'm ordained by, I'm actually divine myself.
this is not to say that then that people are to just blindly follow kings. And we can use our government in this. I think it's appropriate to use our government to blindly follow and say, that is not right. That's not what this is saying. It says to follow them, but you honor them. You do it respectfully.
Just like Steve said, as long as it doesn't go against the moral law of God.
Right. And so what are those moral laws of God? What are some examples? Because I have a great one that's come up with.
Well, like a good example would be abortion. That would be the one that's right here today, the government's trying hard to make it legal and block every effort to make it illegal. But we can't go with that.
Right,
Right?
right.
But we don't, like I say, I love it, but we don't blow up medical clinics.
Right.
Because you see, that's not the way God works either. If
Exactly.
God, I'll let him handle all the,
So what about laws that apply to us? And actually, the abortion law, while I absolutely 100% agree with you, doesn't actually apply to Howard, if you will.
Right.
Right? Because, one, I'm not going to get an abortion, right? So what are some other examples, is what I'm saying, that
Another
apply to
example
you
would be,
personally?
even though we don't like it, we should pay taxes, because it's part of the law.
Right, okay, I agree with that. Others? Other
You know,
examples?
Our Constitution, where we have the freedom of religion, and they're trying to take that away lately.
Right, that's kind of where I was actually kind of heading
With
towards
the,
is,
Yeah.
in the military, the chaplains and all, they trying to,
Right.
they arrest them or trying to get them where they can't do their job.
right, where we are not allowed to pray.
Not allowed to
Yeah.
pray.
I know it sounds kind of crazy, but we're not allowed to pray on government property. We're not allowed to proselytize on government property. We can't speak the name of Jesus.
Or like you said, the chaplains in the
The chaplains,
military have
They-
been,
They're having problems right now,
right.
some of them.
yeah.
So
In
here
the
comes
Navy,
this-
and some of the oaths they take, taking God's name out of it now.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to worship on Sunday unless the government has authorized us to do that. Just happened in 2020.
Wait, say that again?
We're not allowed to worship unless the government gives us authority to do it.
Oh, you're talking about because of COVID?
2020
Okay, yeah, yeah.
is an
And
example
you're
of
right.
that.
And see, that's what I think people need to, this is where I separate this time and now, because some of the things that we're talking about, you don't need, prayer. Who knows I'm praying?
Right.
Yeah.
You see, so I understand we gotta be very careful we don't get, because I was one of them, to get too mixed up in the government per se, because there's still things like you can't meet to worship. Oh yeah, I can. I mean, there's ways you can meet
You
with
just keep
people.
doing it.
You just keep doing it. It doesn't have to be maybe this structure.
They do it at your house.
That's so I think that's where I think a lot, and that's the problem with a lot of Christians today. They only think of this.
But
It's
you know, this stuff like he's talking about, I didn't realize until I read an article this week that we think it was eye-opening here. I understand in Australia, they've gone over the top more than.
Queensland, yeah, crazy
They've
wacky.
gone, they've gone even over the top more than the US as far as militant
Yeah.
lockdown.
yes,
Yeah, New Zealand's even worse.
yeah, it's easy.
Well, that's why they're trying to come up with some opposition to try to keep it from getting there. We gotta start doing
Yeah.
something now rather than wait. till-
Exactly. Try to keep some sanity in
Yeah.
it.
Right.
Instead of just
different-
passively following along.
Right, yeah.
But again, even the because of the Constitution, even non-religious people, I hate to use that term, even they are, which is good about this country, stubborn and fight back because of what we're talking about. So that's a good thing. We're just in a roundabout way, because you're right. In those other countries, they're not fighting back.
So when the conflict comes between God's law and man's law, as long as we can go along with things, but when the conflicts, we have to, as Christians, go with God's law. It trumps the other,
That's right,
if it comes down to it. But
exactly.
and we've been fortunate enough to where we could live the way we had been going pretty good with government and as Christianity, but
We gotta recognize that line.
Satan's stepping up his game, it looks like,
Like in the thirties, the German government, started mandating about, most of the churches went along with the government. And, but a few people, like Dietrich Bonhoeffer and what have you, stood up and, called it like it was.
Yeah.
So are we, a Dietrich Bonhoeffer, or are we like the rest of the,
Well, I think Howard, your point with the 2020, that's the only thing which we talked about. I don't mind a congregation making a decision on their own, but when the federal government mandates it, that's when, to me, congregation should have got together and said, they went and filed, everybody should have, every
but
congregation
eventually the
should have filed suit.
congregations did.
Should have filed suit.
Eventually the congregations
Eventually.
did get, brush it off and say, we're gonna start meeting again.
Because,
It just took a while to get there.
and if that's the problem, it should have never gotten to that point. I mean, to me, that's what's scary, because they set a precedent, and it's concerning. I don't mind the leadership doing that, but you can't let the government take it. To me, that's not good.
It makes me wonder, the real question is, honestly, do we really follow more of God's law, or do we really follow more of man's law?
I think we follow more of man's law than we, hate to say have to, but in a way we do have to.
Yeah, that's kind of a point. Are we at that point in our lives that we can say, God's law is absolutely supreme?
But yes, I know where you're going, but let me just throw something in. It's not always black and white, and as engineers, we tend to be black and white.
We are.
The number is the number, not this new stuff where the number doesn't matter, it does matter. And so we can, the fact we couldn't meet, let's go back to the COVID deal. All right, we followed the law by not meeting, but we figured out a way virtually, or whatever you wanna call it, to do it. So, if you say, well, let's just take masks for instance, they're trying to mandate masks. And nowhere in the Bible that I saw anywhere that it says that you're not supposed to wear a mask. So I can't find in God's law, and I'm not a scholar, I admit, but that says you shouldn't have to wear a mask. So if I try to dig my heels in and fight the government, I'll use that phrase, who's local or whatever, and say, I'm not gonna wear a mask, how do I, is that God's law, or is it just, using the idea where we're supposed to take care of ourselves as opposed to, so I guess my point is
Really, the principle of today and Romans 13
Well,
would be, if you can,
Follow
within reason, you follow the,
Exactly.
follow the
Well,
government.
because of
You can.
what was going on, we thinking, well, this is just a temporary thing. They're not telling us you can't never meet again. We thinking it's just temporarily, but then for how long does it drag on, and how long do you
Yeah,
go?
no, I understand
It would
that.
be different if they were telling us, all right, you can't meet anymore at all.
Ever.
Yeah,
But
they
they-
haven't been.
but I think we all know.
But setting the precedents?
Yeah, but that,
Well,
it's like,
Now just
that's
makes
what you have to
it
watch.
easier next time.
That's what you have to be watching.
It's the
Where
slippery
they
slope.
going with it.
It's a
And
slippery
that's
slope.
what's the same thing with the Germans in the 30s,
Yeah, right.
German churches.
Mhm.
And they-
Step at a time.
One step at a time.
And that wasn't a slippery slope, that was a big, huge step off.
Yeah, but it's still boiling the frog.
Well, here's what it's all about. We're talking about the law and all that. Now let's go forward after the cross. As a believer, we should be a slave to righteousness. As a believer, you go to Romans, tells you about who we slaves to, sin or God. As a believer, if you're following the Holy Spirit, you'll be a slave to righteousness and to God. And we need to understand that. So, yes, the law is there. I get it. But if I am living in the Spirit and being led by the Spirit, yes, I will make mistakes. But in the end, my honor is to God. And I think we need to separate that. And I see where we're going with all this. But if I'm following Christ and I'm a slave to him, then I will tell you that my focus will be on God's, not moral law in a sense, but my fallen Christ. And through the heart, my renewed heart, my actions will show you that. I'm not perfect. But in the end, I believe that a true born-again believer, his life will reflect his relationship with Christ as he grows. So that's what I say about the law and all that, is I would say, I get it, 13, I understand it, I will abide by the laws, but in the end, I'm a slave to God through Christ. And I think it's important.
Yeah, I mean, the whole, with chapter 13, I think the most important verse is verse 10, which says, love does no wrong to a neighbor, love therefore is the fulfillment of the law.
Amen, brother.
In other words, we are called to be ambassadors, right? And in being ambassadors, there are times when we don't, it's not that we compromise, but there's times when we're called not to dig our heels in on something that's, that's not law, but if it's going to cause someone else to stumble, or if it's going to cause us not to act in love. This is just an example, because I know people on both sides. But if I'm with somebody and they truly believe that you need to wear a mask somewhere, I'm not going to say, well, I don't care what you feel, I ain't wearing a mask. That would be, especially if it's someone you're witnessing to or whatever, that you have to show but we are called to show love to one another. That's the ultimate law. That's the ultimate law that we're called to do, is
Well, that is
to love
scriptural.
one another.
When you word it that way,
Right.
the eating of unclean foods to, exactly how it's worded.
Sacrifice to idols.
Right, that's
Well,
what,
yeah, if
So
you're
If you're with the crowd that it's gonna be a stumbling block, then don't do it.
so eating pork is not a sin.
No.
But if you're in a family atmosphere where they see it is a sin, don't eat pork that day.
Right.
It'd be a stumbling block.
Because it's a stumbling block for someone else.
Right.
So,
but and then ultimately, I think we have a responsibility to teach them the truth.
Yeah.
That it's true, that in really in God's word, that's not that's, I think we have the responsibility to do that.
Right.
But at that moment, at that time, to be contentious with someone.
If the door's shut before you get
Right,
there.
yeah, you never.
That's what Paul constantly
That's
did,
what
right?
Paul,
Paul
yeah.
constantly did that.
Become all things to all men,
Yeah.
God might win some.
That's right.
And
Just
yet
the-
when they were told, don't share Jesus and whip them and everything, they said, well, look, I have to.
We have
But,
to.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
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 exactly why
when you
I
take a
answered
stand.
no
We
to
can't
your
not
question
teach.
You can't, yeah.
about does Jesus care about other people's opinions? To me, if I didn't care about Mickey, who's a non-pork eater, by not eating pork in front of him, I do that to stumbling block, yada, yada, but because I care about your opinion.
Right.
So that's the connection I was making. He cares about the opinion enough to try to figure out a way
Right.
and teaching is not just saying it one time and say, I'm done. You have to accept it and yada, yada. So it's convoluted.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and once again, the ultimate thing is we're called to win people to Christ, to show the love of Christ,
That's right.
to witness to them, to allow God to, to speak through us. And that's our response. We need to find ways that we can do that, and so
Without compromise.
without compromise,
Without compromise.
absolutely. If there comes a time when, if it would be where God says, don't eat pork, then that's where you cross the line,
That's
right?
right.
So the whole assumption of all the things that you guys have been talking about is you have to know God's word. You got to understand His intent and,
Yeah.
and be in tune, if you will, with the Spirit.
Absolutely.
And you have to do that. You cannot use CNN as your guideline or Fox News as your guideline.
Or some
Which,
podcast somewhere.
right, which is, we can't use the wisdom of mankind because it's just foolishness.
That's the key, right?
Right?
That-
And that's what you have to.
Yeah.
That's why that last statement is, when you act in love, right? You fulfill the requirements. That's what God is calling us to do, is to act in love.
Right, and we're gonna see that in about 10 more verses. So, we're gonna stop here. What are you guys praying for?